Redditors, what is your crap happens academic story? Was taking Calculus 2 in college. The class only had 3 tests. I bombed the first one. Got less than 50% if I recall correctly. Second test I made a C. Obviously, I was in danger of failing the class. I had the option to emergency drop the class and preserve my GPA leading up to the final exam. I spoke with my professor and asked if I got a high enough grade on the final if he would drop my first test grade and replace my final test grade, or at the minimum weigh my final test more heavily so I could get a C in the class. I didn't need the A, but if I got less than a C I'd have to retake the class. The C wouldn't be disastrous to my GPA either. The final was cumulative and I felt like it was a reasonable request. I still had no learn the material. Being a naive freshman I didn't like to quit, so I thought this was a good idea. The professor agreed to replace my exam grade with higher final if got at least a C+. I took the test, got a C+ on the exam and was very proud of myself. I checked in with him afterwards and he had no recollection of our talk or agreement. Got a D in the class. I was livid. Had to retake the class. You live and learn, I guess. Always get things like that in writing. Kid streaked, fully naked, across campus, hiding his face using a condom. He passed out about a minute into the run. It's not about the distance, it's about sending a message. I knew a girl who graduated with a 3.99 GPA because she got an A in drawing, or some class like that, her freshman year. Her teacher apparently told her she did that to teach her that she can't be perfect in everything. If I was her I would lose it. 3rd grade. So like 1990, student teacher is frustrated with the class and their poor performance on a recent spelling test. He's lecturing us about how few words in English have 3 consecutive vowels. The only word we'd know in 3rd grade or have on a spelling test in 3rd grade is quiet. He told us we don't know any other words with 3 vowels together. I raised my hand. Genuinely concerned, I asked him if beautiful is not the correct spelling of beautiful, and then I was asked to go sit in the hall. I went to a school pretty well known for its athletic programs, so any black dude in our school's athletic gear could easily be mistaken for an athlete, especially if you had the tags on your backpack as well. Long story short, I borrowed a ton of swag from a former athlete, wore it to all my classes, and all of a sudden my professors were floored by my academic performance. They'd call me in after class. Pathama, this is honestly one of the best papers I've read this year. Your grasp on the literature is incredible, and I'm like, bruh, I wrote this exact same crap last semester and got a B on it. Needless to say, I wore the athletic swag to each of my classes until I graduated. Athletic gear, +5 speed, +5 charisma. When wearing a complete set, this armor will make you more favorable among teachers, occasionally raising your grades. I used to skateboard around campus on a penny board to get around the buildings faster. There were a ton of hills, and because of the amount of people on bikes there were even traffic lights for pedestrians to avoid any collisions. In my sophomore year I accidentally ran into a girl crossing the road. She had a red light and called the police to come help since she took a pretty hard fall. Well, after the police come she starts yelling about how I assaulted her and tried to mug her, so I got arrested. All things were dropped once my lawyer got the video footage of the accident showing her fault, but the allegations stuck with my face as it was posted on the school news site. My grades seemed oddly low that semester as well. Your first mistake was riding a penny board. For real though, that blows. Frick that chick for dumping that on you. In my last semester of senior year of high school I didn't get along with my English teacher at all. She was that teacher whose class everyone dreaded being placed in. I absolutely hated her, and my apathy in her class reflected that. Because I was a lazy, disruptive student, she graded my work even harsher than most kids in the class, and coming into the final my grade was sitting at a 68%. I was terrified because I had somehow managed to get into a pretty decent college and was so excited to get the heck out of my town and start college life. But if I got a D in the class those credits wouldn't count and my acceptance would be withdrawn. I studied incredibly hard to get a good enough score to pull up my grade to a C, but I ended up getting a 68% on the test. I thought the world was over. I wouldn't be able to go to college. I would be stuck in my town with my parents while all my friends were off starting new lives with new friends and having the most fun they'd ever had. I was absolutely devastated. Somehow, someway, my horrible, selfish, unfair, tyrannical English teacher decided in her heart that day to round my grade up to a C. I have no idea why she did it, and I didn't deserve it, but that small act of mercy saved my butt and my experience in college was amazing. Your teacher didn't want to see you around town anymore either. Made 2 literally crappy typos in the range of 4 words when I was writing a paper for the number journal of my field. In an attempt to be fancy and well spoken, I finished my introduction with this gem. This paper is an attempt to assess this paradigm crap. Needless to say, my spell checker and co-authors all failed to notice them and I submitted the paper just like that. I submitted a paper for a class with an opening line of due to a number of societal and economic pressures, modern young adults are doing more things in the bedroom. It was a product proposal paper for an integrated bedside table with USB ports. I had meant watching Netflix on their phones, not becoming prostitutes. I had to have a talk with the school resource officer, policeman that walks around, in 8th grade cause I had such a great comeback. I was a fat kid, and so I couldn't do push-ups properly. The douchebag kid said you're not going down right, and through the grace of God I was able to say that's not what your mom said last night instantly and without stuttering. One of my classmates tells a teacher we all thought was cool, and he makes me have a talk with all the middle school teachers and the officer. The gist of the talk was basically if you go to a trashy school and say something like this, you'll get beat up. My school always had a circus put on by 2nd graders. It was basically a funny circus related play with skits. They did the same skits every year. The whole school would go to watch. Parents and faculty would come. It was great. Everyone in the grade participated. In kindergarten and 1st grade, we all watched the show with glee and imagined which roles we would get to be when we got to 2nd grade. When my grade got to 2nd grade, the school changed it to a 1st grade circus. We got freaking skipped. I'm almost 30 and I'm still mad about it. Also in college, I answered a question on a genetics exam about a pedigree and got a 0 on that question. I went to talk to the professor and explained politely why both the correct answer and my answer could be correct. There was some missing information on the pedigree and you could either assume it was one way or another. One way was more common but the other was plausible. He said that I was right but the other answer was the one on the key, so I couldn't get points back. So I lost points for being able to understand more complex concepts. Thanks. I have really bad depression and during finals week of a 17 credit semester I had to do like 2 or 3 impromptus for one of my classes and I was so burnt out by the last essay I got halfway through the 2nd body paragraph and just wrote I can't do this anymore. I'm burnt out. It's been a great semester. Thanks. I either got a B+ or an A or something. Astronomer here. I recently submitted my PhD, which I am very proud about. In particular, I am proud of it because I had to switch advisors after 5 years. The first, in hindsight, did not take me seriously as a scientist and really didn't know practicalities about the project. We were building an ambitious radio telescope instrument and he was a theorist who vastly underestimated the challenges and technical details. About 5 years in he concluded that the problem was actually me, and told everyone he had just realized that I was in fact incapable of independent research. So did his best to kick me out of academia. He was also department head, so nothing I could do about it. I still have research I will never be allowed to publish, for example, which was supposed to be a significant chunk of my original thesis. Anyway, I transferred universities and finished my PhD on another continent. Realized I actually do like research when treated with respect, and I'm good at it when given the resources to do so, and published multiple first author papers and getting awarded my own VLA radio telescope time for my ideas. And in a few weeks I am starting a research postdoc at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, which I am super excited about. So yeah, totally incapable of independent research right here. Some people. I'm really happy for you. All the hard work and dedication you put in despite the odds has led you to something great. You truly deserve it, and best of luck in the future. I was a very verbose and hoity-toity writer in high school. The language I used in academic papers was beyond what I used in daily conversation. I was accused by a teacher of plagiarism. I went to the principal and pleaded my case. I was hurt later on by a second teacher who accused me of the same. I chose to go to the principal yet again to plead my case, and he asked again if I was plagiarizing. I wasn't. I never got an apology from my teachers. My parents are in a divorce and I sometimes have to write emails to our social workers, and my mother have been accused of telling me to send emails that she made multiple times. There is one mail which is written so formal that my younger sister and my father still don't believe that I wrote it. This happened to my wife. In high school, she was a state champion kickboxer. During the finals, someone took a dirty swipe at her and broke her leg and tore her ACL. She was out of school for a bit, and eventually went back to school on pain meds. It was near finals, and there was a paper due. She wasn't back in time for the due date, but everyone else was. She got to turn it in late, so she took her friend's paper, changed the name at the top and turned it in. She got an A. Her friend got a B. It was word for word even with the exact same misspellings in it. Friend didn't care until she learned about the grades. That would make sense if your wife had less time to write it. During the summer just after I graduated, I became a lab technician in a plant lab on a project on being able to model plant pathogen spores dispersal. Fusarium if you're curious. I spent a good 2 months designing and building a UAV using an RC plane since drones weren't a thing back then. It would carry a 2-gallon jug of dye that would be used for the modeling. I show my pi the finished product and he's apathetic about it. Q 6 months later when I see my UAV being used in the college advertisement you see during football weekends and a PR piece where he's saying how hard it was to him to design and build the UAV. My GF, now wife, saw what happened and replied, "Welcome to academia." I found out through a co-worker I kept in touch with that plane ended up getting a ton of use and instrumental in a couple of papers. I still get annoyed by that, but it worked out in the end. TL. DR. I got called before an academic board in undergrad due to ghosts. I went to a school that is chock full of ghost stories. A couple prominent fires, hazing deaths, and some infamous alumni led to stories. Living in the most haunted dorm was the cheapest spot on campus. Never saw anything. Lived in one of the spooky rooms for years because it was cheap and pretty much just used by folks who needed to have proof of on-campus housing to then live off campus. So my roommates were never there and I got a giant room as a single. A student found out I lived in the haunted room and started asking questions. I made a joke about it being awesome having ghost roommates. This person was a bit unhinged, so they spent the rest of a 3-hour-long upper class seminar peppering me ghost questions. And because I'm me, I fed into it for a while until it got super irritating and I just folded, leaving the class, only to be chased down by this nutter when they finally cornered me at a local coffee shop in complete hysterics. I told them ghosts aren't real. They backed away in a huff, and I thought the crisis was averted. Until they went forward to our board on a claim of religious persecution because I said ghosts aren't real when I got the official notice. I near pee my pants. I spent hours debating what to do, before finally just giving in and deciding to roll the dice. Turned out, total kangaroo court. The classmate presented this long diatribe about the spiritual realm, and the vote for censure went 3-2 in their favor after I presented myself flabbergasted. When all was said and done and the classmate left vindicated, I was crestfallen, till I heard the laughter start building at the table. The dean of academics and my department chair poured us all a drink before calmly explaining the situation. The lunatic's father is a huge donor, so they did this nonsense appeasement around 3 times a year. Academic boards, security checks, etc. So they handle the situation, then they lose the records. That's how I ended up drinking a really nice bottle of something and gaining 2 honest friends. They also happened to be helpful to the rest of my academic career, which was awesome, all because of ghosts. When I did my first undergrad, I missed a final exam that counted for a solid 30% of my grade. The course had 2 sections, with 2 different profs, so slightly different material. I knew who my prof was, but had a brain fart and thought I was in the other section of the course. I show up for the final, realize it's the wrong section, and get that feeling of dread, and for good reason. My section had their final exam the day before. So, the first thing I do is try to call my professor. No answer. Leave a voicemail. Send an email. Call back. Go to office hours. No one there. It's the end of the term. Another call. All this over the span of a few days. If something can be done, I have to get the ball rolling. I never hear back from the professor. I think I'm fricked. I know how well I wasn't doing in that class the whole semester. I skipped a lot to bang my girlfriend at the time, so there was a reason. Final marks come back. B+. WTF. So in my entire school life I somehow managed to avoid group projects. Until my last year of high school when I ended up with 2 at the same time over the course of 2 months. The first one was in my IT class. I was in a class full of immature buttholes and was the only girl too. Ratio was 1:8. I ended up in a group with 2 of the laziest people. For our project we had to make an interactive presentation which included a drag and drop game, video and multiple images and information about our school. Out of the 16 slides, I ended up doing 12. Worst part was when I spent 6 hours straight on the video since I was the most knowledgeable in video editing. When it was 90% done I thought it got corrupted and I cried. Luckily I saved it in school. When I told me group about the corrupt scare, they said, so is it done then? I've never wanted to slap someone so hard before. I also ended up making the game because they didn't know how. Worst part was the teacher thought I was lazy because I was missing deadlines from doing so much. Ended up with a C on that nightmare. So sadly they did too. Meanwhile in drama, we had to get into pairs and do a scene from a play called Bowl Girls as our final piece. I only had one male friend in that class and the scene required 2 girls, so I ended up with one of the girls who didn't get picked by their friends. They got pissed that they were stuck with me and bolted out of the class. She also took a load of days off because of it, even faked sick, and I thought it was my fault for ages. She eventually came back in and we got caught up. During the scene we had to do, I throw a basket of clothes at her in rage, so I replaced the soft shirts and socks with slightly tougher jackets and jeans. As a bonus, there was another part where I wave a glass bottle over her head like I'm going to hit her and I forgot to place the bottle nearby, so I soaked her with one that had water in it. That ended up being one of my best scenes and got an A for petty revenge. I've been upset about this for 15+ years, but I actually got into an argument with my 4th grade teacher over the dimensions of a tennis court. The question asked whether a singles or doubles player had to cover more ground, and she pointed at the picture and just said clearly the doubles player does because the court is bigger. I told her that there's 2 players on the court when doubles are played and she told me I was wrong. I was so pissed I wound up arguing that she was wrong until I got sent to the principal and they called my parents. You wouldn't believe how pissed my parents were that I got sent to the principal for being right. How does one not know that there are 2 players on each side on a doubles court? My first semester of college I was struggling with calculus I. My notes weren't matching what the professor was writing on the chalkboard. Like the chalkboard notes were missing information. This was screwing me up and I was barely passing exams. On the other hand I was doing pretty good with homework and fortunately this was keeping me from failing the class. It all boiled down to the final exam, which was comprehensive of the entire semester. While taking notes a friend asked me if he could copy some of the notes I'd made earlier. I of course agreed, and as he was copying he started noticing that I was missing things. That should be squared. You missed the X there. WTF. I looked at the board and what he was saying wasn't what I was seeing. He told me, maybe you should have your eyes examined. So I did. I'm colorblind. The teacher was using color chalk to emphasize some of the equations and it was matching the chalkboard color. I literally wasn't seeing some of what he was writing. I was also a bit nearsighted. One set of glasses and a move to the front row of class later, I could see what he was writing better and the chalk didn't blend as badly. I got an A on the final and passed the class. I think it was 7th grade, and we had to write a non-fiction story. I had a budding talent in storytelling, so everyone loved the first 2 paragraphs I wrote. Teacher said the final draft, we were expected to do at least 1 draft before the final, would be due in a week. Then I was stricken with a bad case of the flu. I was gone a whole week because I was still running a fever. I came back, expecting the teacher to be like, where's your paper? Where's the final draft? But I never asked her about it, and sure enough, she never asked me to finish it. During a GCSE chemistry class, myself and my friend weren't really paying attention and were switched to the front seats so the teacher could keep an eye on us. These seats were in a C shape around the teacher's desk, so we were sitting to his left. Halfway through the class, a phone started ringing with a generic ringtone. As it was school, everyone goes quiet to see who is about to be told off. The substitute teacher, let's call him Mr. S, decided that person would be me and demands I turn off my phone. I knew that it wasn't my ringtone, so I explained that to him. He wouldn't accept it and just kept repeating, turn off your phone or it will be a detention. After this had gone back and forth about 4-5 times, I'd had enough, and just to prove him wrong, I pulled out my phone and dismantled it, placing the back cover, the battery and the main part of the phone separately across the desk. Mr. S looks at me and states that's a detention. I told you to turn off your phone. At this point, the ringing stops and starts again, at which point I notice it's coming from somewhere close by. I lean to the right and look down to the side of the desk and suggest, Mr. S, I think that's your phone ringing. Mr. S replies, I don't have a mobile. I hate the things. I then leaned across and a bit further and saw the phone in the side pocket of his bag, lit up and showing someone's name and the words is calling. I explain this to my teacher, to which he responds, get out, go see Mr. B, my head of year, you're suspended. I did so, explained the situation, and as it was near the end of the class, my friend soon joined me and explained that the ringing was still going despite me leaving the room. My head of year removed the detention and suspension, and Mr. S was never seen again in our school. The harder I studied for personality psych, the worse I did on the tests. Finally just stopped studying, showed up to my final having not gone to class and not read the textbook and got like a 90% LOL. Also, there was a TAE strike my junior year and our TAE Brit Lit before 1750 just gave everyone an A, which I did not deserve because frick Chaucer. So living at home with my parents the first year of college and I got cancer. The law said you had to be at least half time in college to be on your parents' insurance. I was faced with the choice of dropping classes that I was going to fail anyways and losing insurance, or taking on a heavy workload, failing classes in engineering school, and fighting cancer all at the same time. Seemed like a giant waste of money to take classes knowing I didn't have the time to dedicate to passing the class, but it was the only way to guarantee I could get the treatment I needed. Uni sophomore. One of my non-major requirements was an economics course. Homework for a small percentage of the grade. 3 exams and a final for the bulk of the grade. First exam comes up. First 6 chapters of the book, and I study like a beast. I work every problem in the first 6 chapters. I review my homework. I memorize the figures and tables. Get the exam. Don't understand any of the questions. Muddle through. Get a 56. The guy that sits beside me in class, when he bothers to come at all, gets a 94. Dude, is this your second time through? Number. I know he hasn't bothered to turn in any homework, and he sits in class and cleans his fingernails with a penknife. This always has stuck out in my memory. How the heck did you pull off a 94? He asks me the question that changed my entire approach to university. Don't you have a copy of last semester's tests? But it's a new textbook this semester. Doesn't matter. The profs repeat the tests regardless. WTF. After that, I made sure to get donated class sets or purchase class sets, notes and tests from previous students, and I made sure to pass mine along for every class. The number of lazy butt professors who don't bother to update their exams is ridiculous. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.